The NBA never sleeps. There's so much drama going on. Free agency, the summer league, everything. And to break it down, Mr. Scoop B. Robinson, you can find him over at Bally Sports, where he's an NBA writer. Scoop, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so there is nobody I trust more with Kyrie Irving information than you, because you've always been on point. It's always been measured and all of that. So what is the latest with Kyrie Irving and his status with the Brooklyn Nets?
It's chestnut checkers, and I think in this situation with Kai and the Nets, it comes down to the chain of command. From my understanding of it, he likes the Nets as it relates to the organization and having a familial connection, being from West Orange, New Jersey, and his dad being and his godfather being from the Bronx and all his family in New York, and having a cognitive understanding of both sides of the river. But if it doesn't work out in Brooklyn, he has a desire to be somewhere west, and I know that everybody will assume that it's the Lakers. I'm told on the Irving side, from sources in the know, that the Lakers is more of a manufactured discussion. But there are some other teams that, his representation has intimated to the Nets. And if we're going at face value with the West, you got to look at the Clippers. You got to look at the Mavs. And I've said this in my reporting all the way back to when he opted in. He and Kalu have a good relationship, dating back to the Cleveland years, and any argument of them not having a good relationship, I was told that that's not the case. And Irving, and Lou won a championship together in Cleveland during their time there with LeBron James. So, but it was shared that if he's to be moved, west is where he'd like to go. But hopefully he and the Nets can figure it out. And chestnut checkers is the thing that is consistently discussed within that circle.
Well, okay, so what exactly does chestnut checkers mean? Because I would imagine every player wants a long-term deal and a long-term contract, but it seems like he's kind of in that wait-and-see, prove it mode. So what does, chestnut checkers mean?
It means being patient, not forcing things, and showing and proving. And I think that it comes down to, first of all, him being able to play next season if he's in New York City, and the mandates not coming back or being rolled back like they were before. It's from my understanding, just from looking at the whole situation, Mayor Eric Adams, rolled those back not just because of Kyrie Irving, but the Yankees and the Mets do play baseball in New York City in two of the five boroughs in the Bronx and in Queens. But specifically to your question, I think that for him, he does want a long-term extension. He did opt in, and he feels like he, from what I understand, has given it his all to the best of his ability. And that from people that I've spoken with, they feel like the jab or that being an issue, it's like he's being doubly blamed. That the Nets didn't make it further in the playoffs because of seeding, because he couldn't play. But, the Nets ultimately made the decision for Irving to not play home games, well, not to play away games until, the situation became what it was, where COVID kind of eradicated some of those guys on the roster, and they were short some guys on that team. And Kyrie ultimately came back and showed improved. So in answer to your question about specifically chestnut checkers, is being quiet, saying the right things, listening, and focusing on getting the best potential deal, whether that's him going elsewhere or him staying. But saying all the right things. And I think that kind of goes back to just his whole rollout going into the offseason. When he sat down with I Am Athlete and kind of got people to know more about him, his brand, and what he's about, and kind of clearing the air on certain things. I think a lot of times with Kyrie Irving, the reason why he is so discussed as an unknown is many people don't know him. And his focus this summer was kind of for people to get to know him in an intimate way. He did about an hour-long interview with I Am Athlete and did some other interviews as well. But this Nets team really was the recipe for disaster since the season even began. You know, with people believing that both he and James Harden have had some rifts. They're cool. From my understanding, again, it was more Nash and James Harden who had issues than Kyrie and Nash, or rather Kyrie and James Harden, as it related to the whole jab conversation. So I know this is a very layered topic, but as it relates to chestnut checkers, I think it's a situation where people are getting to know him. He's being quiet, and things are being worked out behind the scenes, whether the Nets ultimately trade him or what have you. But he lost $14 million, and to lose another 35, 36, 37 million, I just don't think that was in the equation for him. You know, if he would have not opted in, he would have taken a $6 million mid-level exception to go to the Lakers. Guy wants to get paid, but he also is standing on his principles. So I think it's kind of a wait-and-see approach right now.
You guys, we're on with
or trade me.
Exactly. You guys, we're on with ScoopB Robinson. Find him over at Bally Sports, where he's an NBA columnist and a host over there. Now, as we've been looking at his relationship with Kevin Durant, what's the latest on that? Because Kevin, his public comments were like, listen, I understand business is business, and me and Kai are going to be cool, but is that the actual truth?
Yeah, from all indications, those guys are cool, but they're not. Their relationship extends outside the realm of just basketball. Their friends are friends. Their families are friends. Their relationship and getting closer really dates back to a vacation that they took in 2018, where their friends pitched the idea of them playing in Brooklyn. And their friends text, they're in group text, they chat. There's a conversation there. So I think it's so very layered. You know, even when Kai was playing in Boston, when Kevin was a member of the Warriors, Kai Chef at the time had made a vegan dish. Kai has a plant-based diet, and he made a bean burger. The chef, and Kevin enjoyed it from what I've heard, and you know, their relationship had started that fall, or rather that summer, when they all went on vacation somewhere nice, somewhere hot, and over the All-Star break back in 2019, they all hung out. Kai rented an apartment, and they were taping some things and doing some things, and they were at a Jordan party, and Kevin had red wine, and Kai, I think, was drinking water. I was standing right next to them, and they were just joking and talking about basketball. Like, Kevin would do this thing where, you know, he would like do a spin move, dribble, then do like a finger roll like George Gervin. And I really just noticed just this rapport that they had, where it was basketball, lifestyle, conversation about life, and just really living in the moment. And, you know, in a world where everybody believed that the Knicks were going to get Zion Williamson, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving, Brooklyn got them. In year one in this partnership, Kyrie's shoulder was an issue. Year two, Kevin Durant came back. And, you know, Kai got hurt in the playoffs, as did James Harden. Year three, they lost in the playoffs to the Celtics. It's a 4-year partnership, and I hope that they're able to run it back, because I think they gave Brooklyn so much hope. The Nets as an organization, since its inception in 1967 and their identity crisis between Long Island, New Jersey, and the borough of Brooklyn, has been interesting. You've got a huge following from all of those different sections, and I don't think they've ever had the star power that they have currently. And with great power comes great responsibility. You got Ben Simmons at the trade deadline. They really do have a good chemistry with players in their nucleus. I'm hopeful that they figure this thing out. But I also do know from a perspective of just what the Nets have been discussing with other teams. I spoke with someone today and yesterday within the Nets organizational side of things that says, they keep lowballing us, and the Nets ain't giving up shit, is what they said, if they're not giving up star power. And, there's a lot of teams that feel like Kevin is of a certain age that they don't deserve certain looks. The Pelicans don't want to give up Brandon Ingram. The Nets want up Brandon Ingram and Larry Nance Jr. along with some of the 6 picks that the Pelicans have. He trades with the Lakers and the Bucks. Miami is an interesting dichotomy as it relates to Kyrie Irving. Do you give up Strus? Do you give up Tyler Hero? As well as some other pieces. And I know that the Nets would want Bam Adebayo. So it's just interesting on both fronts.
Yeah, well, how does that equate for Kevin Durant? Because I know that if I'm Kevin, I know that the Nets have to get some compensation, but I don't want to go to a situation to now where they've given up everything and I can't compete. Is there any of that talk surrounding any of these trades for either Kevin Durant or for Kyrie Irving?
On the Kyrie side, I can tell you that a lot of the negotiations and conversations are coming from his agent, Shatalia Riley Irving, who is a black woman negotiating in a world that doesn't look like us. And I know that the Nets and Irving's stepmother have been in contact. I'm not sure that Kyrie is as vocal with the organization as his representation is, as it relates to Kevin Durant. I spoke with someone who spoke to Kevin, and they asked Kevin how he was doing, and asked him about the net situation, and his response was, "I don't want to talk about that." So I know Chris Hansen came out with a report where he talked about he's become radio silent. I do know somebody who actually did speak with Kev, and Kev has been he doesn't want to talk about basketball. He kind of just wants to focus on the off season. So I guess maybe those are hurdles or challenges that they feel. And I know that this is a fluid dialogue and a fluid discussion, but I do think that some of Kyrie and Kevin's disappointment comes from even folks that they brought in to the fold in Brooklyn. I know that Kevin spoke with someone I know a while back just about representation and people who look like him, brown people that look like him, and wanting to see more people in front office and or worker positions. I know that he brought in a guy that's a security guy that ended up being removed from the team because of that whole thing with PJ Tucker, a guy that is now in another position in the NBA. I know that Eli Carter, a friend of Kyrie Irving's, he played AAU basketball with him. He played at Rutgers. I know that he was let go because of COVID, not being vaccinated, and then ultimately when they lifted the restrictions, they didn't bring him back. I know that Kevin Durant's shooting coach, who became an assistant coach, Adam Harrington, is in a situation where he was let go, still paid, left, but he's somebody that's very close, and is a basketball mind, a brilliant basketball mind that was let go. And I know that there are people who were within that Nets organization, like DeAndre Jordan, who was brought in, and they thought there would be a big three with Kai as well as Kevin. And ultimately it wasn't fruitful because you brought in Mike D'Antoni, and D'Antoni doesn't really play centers. D'Antoni was a consultant. So there's a lot of things that people are disappointed in as far as just the schematics of that. I also know that Steve Nash wants more of a system-based approach. And Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are one-of-a-kind superstars.
Well, and he's got to be a better, and he's got to coach better too. But Scoop, we got about 30 seconds left, and I wanted to comment on what do Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving think about Steve Nash as a coach? Because I've been critical since he got circles coached around him by Ime Udoka.
I don't want to speak for them on this matter because I know that it's still an ongoing discussion. But I think my opinion is that there needs to be better communication between all three. And I think that even goes back to Kyrie when the whole insurrection happened and how he and his coaching staff, Nash as well as Kyrie, communicated. I also know that in this situation, Phil Handy, who was an assistant coach with the Lakers, was Kyrie's choice as a head coach. It didn't work that way. And the Nets were not granted permission to interview Handy for even an assistant coaching position. So there's a lot of factors, and I don't think we have enough time in the day to really dig into it. I know you said 30 seconds. I went over, but that's what I have.